Joining us now is Representative Paul Gosar, Republican from Arizona, a member of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. He's leading the charge for Attorney General Eric Holder's resignation or firing over the Fast and Furious scandal. And Congressman Gosar, thanks so much for joining us here on Newsmax TV today.
Thank you for having me, Kathleen.
Well, you will be leading a special order on the House floor tonight beginning at 7 so that House members can voice their concerns about Fast and Furious. What do you hope that this will accomplish?
But what we're trying to do, Kathleen, is to get the American people engaged in what is just an outrageous, egregious procedure that actually cost Brian Terry his life. Over 300 Mexicans have lost their lives, and a total debunk of the way we do justice and proper detective work.
Now, Oversight Committee Chairman Darrell Issa says that Attorney General Eric Holder can still avoid contempt of Congress proceedings if he cooperates with the congressional subpoena seeking documents related to Fast and Furious. Has there been any indication at all that the Attorney General is caving, or do you see contempt proceedings moving forward?
I think it was very clear, Kathleen, that when the conversation was had late last week in regards to the memo that went out to all the members, the quick disbursement that came from the Attorney General's office saying that they've provided all they want, or all they're going to give us, I say get it on. I think it's time that we proceed now ASAP. I'm from Arizona. We are living with the consequences, and we will live with the consequences of this horrible, tragic program. And we need to have answers and make sure that we hold people accountable for those actions and make sure it never happens again.
Okay, so walk us through contempt proceedings. Exactly what would happen, and could it result with Eric Holder behind bars in jail?
Well, I think there's several things that can happen. First of all, it would be brought up in the committee of record, which is government oversight. We would have a vote there and would forward it down to the floor. The speaker would have to take up those charges, and we would have to have that discussion on the House floor. And then it could be remanded to the U.S. Attorney's Office for oversight and adjudication.
Now, there is a new report that Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano may have perjured herself in congressional testimony about Fast and Furious. Do you believe that she and both Holder have perjured themselves? And if so, is that evidence of a White House cover-up or conspiracy?
I've said all along, Kathleen, from very one, I go back to a conversation that Mr. Holder had in Mexico City in April of 2009, where he was orchestrating an aggressive gun running campaign. He was actually supported a week later, if I'm not mistaken, by the president, who used outright fabrication of documents and facts. Most people in America, and I'm one of those, believe that when you violate a border with another country like Mexico, that involves the Secretary of State. It's defense of our homeland security or our border, and that would be homeland security. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Holder talked in that speech that he was working with Secretary of Homeland Security Napolitano in that as well as the Attorney General. And I think that's a cabinet level decision. I think everybody expects that in America, that when we have an operation that's orchestrated like this, that there was keen oversight from everybody in a cabinet level position. And I've said it all along, I have no faith in Mr. Holder. I want him held accountable. I think that we get this country back on track to make sure that we find out the answers to this. And I want to bring one more thing up, Kathleen. I think it's interesting that he relies on the Inspector General, producing all this information. I find it kind of interesting that one of the witnesses that was coming before government oversight was actually contaminated by the Inspector General in not even doing proper protocol in handling of a witness. She actually shared a tape with them. So I believe that they're all involved in this, and we need to find out, and that's why we're so pertinent about having access to witnesses and having access to all the documents that are out there.
Now, what has the Oversight Committee's investigation revealed about any communications the Attorney General might have received from President Obama about Fast and Furious?
Well, I mean, the things that we've put out there, I mean, when you look at the Univision comment, there's just been a staggering of misleadings. When we had the Attorney General in May of last year, he said he knew about Fast and Furious a couple weeks earlier. Then the President's Univision conversation in February, if I'm not mistaken, shows back up, and he talks about having that conversation, and there were some problems that were associated accustomed to Fast and Furious. And so then Mr. Holder also acknowledged that he knew about it then. You know, we don't know what's right in regards to this, and that's why we want to have the information. And yet we've also seen reprisals. We've seen reprisals on the whistleblowers. We've seen, U.S. Attorney Burke resigning and coming forthright with some of the stuff that he's leaked. But I think what we've got so far is that we've got some outright lying of the upper level DOJ to Congress, and what we need to do is make sure that we're holding people accountable.
But you believe this is something the president was made aware of?
I mean, they made this an issue. I mean, when you're looking at over 30,000 Mexicans who have lost their lives in here, and then you have this, the Attorney General bringing this up in April of 2009, and this is going to be one of his foremost types of processes. As far as I'm concerned with how he looks at himself, he's a couple words from indicting himself just in that aspect there, in his speech. And I think what we need to do is we need to have clear transparency, which Congress is entitled to do that, and make sure that the American people understand what's transpired here and held justice accountable just like anybody else.
Why do you believe the White House is hiding these documents, and what do you think that they'll show? Well,
first of all, you already got an upper-level person in DOJ, Lanny Breuer, lying to Congress. I mean, and you had Mr. Holder's chief of staff actually knowing intricate details about what was happening in this gun running scheme, and the Attorney General conveniently never looked at a memo, something of this egregious of an action. And then last but not least is, please tell me, what states now have new gun requirements for sales. It happens to be Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, that when you buy a long rifle, you have more reporting that you have to do. And last but not least is that all the federal firearms dealers who actually were selling these guns, followed the letter of the law to a T. And that just bothers the Attorney General who, in his U.S. Attorney days, talked about we need to brainwash American people to have more gun laws.
Now, the 125 members or so of the House who've made statements demanding Eric Holder's resignation or firing, or the members who've signed a resolution of no confidence, they're all Republicans. However, some Democrats have recently come forward to demand Holder release his findings from an internal investigation into Fast and Furious. Democrats have said that the Fast and Furious investigation is politically motivated, so why are we seeing more Democrats coming forward raising questions about Eric Holder?
Because they know that is a fraud. Last year in September, if I'm not mistaken, or late August, there were 30-something Democrats that petitioned the President and Attorney General Holder to come forward with all this documents so that we could have this organized discussion because they had grave misgivings about Fast and Furious. And that's, Kathleen, why I have such a big problem here is that I want to know where everybody is silent on this. Where are the Hispanics, the Hispanic caucus, the people across here that looks at people's rights and liberties? These people of Mexico have lost over 300 citizens. This is rampant down there, and we just facilitated that. Plus all the crimes and the people of Arizona, plus our law enforcement in Arizona that will be implicated by this. And it's not just going to be there because you see a fast spread of these weapons going throughout. So I think it's about time, and I think people understand, or the other side, the Democratic caucus, does understand that there is a problem here and that the American people want justice and they want to have the transparency that they're entitled to.
How has the scandal impacted the work of border agents on the ground in your home state of Arizona?
Well, I think it's complicated. First of all, what it ends up doing is that it puts them at risk. They have lots of weapons they have to deal with as it was, coming from all over, all segments of the world, from China, from Latin America, from Africa. And now what they did is they had their federal government, their Department of Justice, orchestrating putting guns in the hands of criminals. And these are 50 caliber weapons. And we saw one exercise in which these weapons actually had to make an emergency landing of a helicopter. These are serious business. One of these weapons can shoot a pretty good sized ballistics over a mile away. So they actually put them in harm's way even further. They followed that up by not even keeping them in the loop. And that's what's so problematic is that everybody in America believes that the Department of Justice is working with our law enforcement folks at the state, county, and local level. And to deter them and to put them into harm's way and not keep them in the loop is absolutely ludicrous. In fact, it's egregious, and I would actually say bordering on criminal.
Last question, Representative Gosar, on a separate issue. President Obama has come out in support of same-sex marriage. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I mean, he was building to this point, and I think he's, he likes the hype, and he's been doing this for some time. I disagree with him. I think there's ways that we can make sure that people have equal rights and liberties, and mean something totally different. I do believe that the right of marriage is between a man and a woman, and we'll leave it at that, and he's not going to change my mind.
All right, Representative Paul Gosar, Republican from Arizona, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Kathleen.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.